Agoura Hills, Westlake Hills, and the hills and valleys that surround them all are about to be alive with the joyful sound of handbells. The bell choirs of the United Methodist Church of Westlake Village welcome you to their second spring ring, the sound of bells. And oh, what a sound it is. Hello, I'm John Dockin, and I'm delighted to be your host for this afternoon's concert, which features the liltingly warm sounds of English handbells played by a group of talented women and men, boys and girls from this congregation and our community. Emile wrote, "Music is harmony. Harmony is perfection. Perfection is our dream, and our dream is heaven." We invite you to rejoice with us in an afternoon of heavenly music. Well, the ladies call themselves the ringleaders, and they played Haydn's "We Thy People Praise Thee." Happily, the ringleaders will be back later in the program, playing a hit song that capped the top 40 record charts for 9 weeks. Joshua. You say the name, and you can just feel the power. Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho. Now, the Bible teaches us that Joshua was a man of action. However, during that fateful week, he waited on the Lord's timing. He fought according to God's battle plan, even though God's way of doing things was mighty peculiar to Joshua. He was obedient. What a lesson we can learn from Joshua when things aren't working out in our lives as we think they should. In a special presentation of Joshua, Jericho, and the Walls by Tommy Waldrop, I'm pleased to introduce tenor Paul Krajewski, whom we've stolen today from our chancel choir. We'll hear Paul as the mighty Joshua and the prime chime ringers as his mightier army of Israelites.
Hi. I'm Joshua. Some people call me Josh, but hey, you can call me Jay. My troops. Now to read the script. It doesn't matter what you call me, though. The important one in this afternoon's session is God. I've learned a lot about God over the years. I've seen him do some mighty peculiar things. You see, God's way of doing things is often a little different than our own. When you're dealing with the Lord Almighty, you better reckon for some surprises. That's why I came here today, to tell you about God's surprises in my life and in the life of the Israelites. I brought along some of my army. They used to be trumpet players, but now we're into handbells. Be patient with them, okay? I've been traveling a long time now, over 40 years through the Sinai desert, and it's been hot, and these Hebrew folks have been pretty mighty unhappy campers. They gripe about the bread. They gripe about the meat. They gripe about the water. And they used to throw some wild parties, I tell you. Get respect. Shameful behavior. They forgot the miracle God performed for them when they were slaves in Egypt. What was God going to do with them now? I tell you what I'd do with them. I'd send them all back there. But God wouldn't do that. He made a promise to lead them into the land of Canaan. And God doesn't break his promise. So he waited around until it was time when all those grouchy old folks got up and died. That's when my boss, Moses, put me in charge and told me to lead the youngins into the promised land. Now let me tell you, partners, it's a pretty scary job being in charge of a whole mess of people. The Lord told me to be strong and courageous and to trust in him. I relaxed a little until God gave me my first chore. He told me to take the Israelite scouts on a hiking through the Jordan River. I was thinking we'd build a sturdy bridge, or at least a few logs, but God wanted us to walk straight through the water. That was the surprise began. The very minute our feet touched the water, they parted, and we crossed on dry land. It was much more exciting than building a bridge. Finally, we were in the land that God had promised. The people who lived there had heard about us and the greatness of our God, but they weren't very friendly. In fact, when we came to the walled city of Jericho, they wouldn't come out and welcome us. No, sir, the king of Jericho closed up and locked the gates. Now I ask you, was that very neighborly?
What about Rahab?
I was getting to that. Hold on to your handbells. Like I was saying, they were pretty unfriendly folks, all except for a woman named Rahab. You see, right before we crossed the river, I was getting a little curious about that land that God had promised us. So we went out and took a peek. I sent a few of my best scouts to visit Jericho, but Rahab had outsmarted the king. She pulled the old rope trick on him and helped our scouts escape through a window. And in return for her kindness, we promised to spare her and her family if we had to fight against Jericho. And that's what we just had to do. The people of Jericho wouldn't come out and play, so we had to do something. But the city was so big that
we can't go over it. Can't go over it. We can't go under it. Can't go under it. We can't go through it. Can't go through it. We gotta go around it. Gotta go around it.
I was thinking we'd build some tall ladders or use some ropes and some hooks and scale the walls. But like I've been telling you, God has some different ideas. He told us to march around the city of Jericho for 7 days. For 6 days, we were to march around one time with the priests tooting their trumpets. Then on the 7th day, we were to march around those walls 7 times. Then the priests would blow the trumpets extra loud, and all the rest of us would let out a hoop and a holler, and that's when God would knock the walls to the ground. A mighty strange battle plan, if you ask me. It was embarrassing. The first day we marched around the city, and the people of Jericho were hanging out the windows laughing at us. And on the second day, the kids started throwing water balloons and confetti and were singing at us.
Ring around the city, isn't it a pity? Crazy, crazy, Israelite.
Then on the third day, the mayor of Jericho called a national holiday, and the townspeople came up and had a picnic on the wall and watched our parade. But by the fourth day, our daily trail ride was getting pretty boring stuff, even for those city folks. And I hate to admit it, by the fifth and the sixth day, we were getting a little nervous ourselves.
Do you really think they're gonna fall for it? I hope we don't blow it. I've still got confetti in my hair.
Early in the morning of the seventh day, we got up, we ate our Wheaties, and prepared to march. We had seen our God do mighty things for us. We knew he would keep his promise. 6 times we marched around, and the priests blew their trumpets. Then, on the 7th time around, I gave the cue, and to everyone, for shouts and hollers that the walls would bite the dust. The Israelite army ran over the fallen walls right up to the shocked people of Jericho and said,
Surprise!
Then we captured the city, except for Rahab and her family. We made them honorary Israelites. That night we had a big barbecue, a hoedown, and praised God, and celebrated the victory over Jericho. Well, folks, that's my story. I learned that God's ways are not always our ways. If you're serving him with a true heart, don't get discouraged if things don't come out the way you think they should. God just might have a surprise up his sleeve with your name on it.
and a child shall lead them. The Prime Chime Ringers is our church's youngest handbell choir, consisting of 4th through 6th graders who rehearse 1 hour a week. These devoted young people learn their musical reading and handbell playing skills under the direction of our director, Donna Riesen. Donna is more than ably assisted in this task by Sonny Benjamin. The choir's reputation is spreading, and they recently experienced a musical adventure when they played at a Sunday morning service at the Episcopal Church of the Epiphany in Agoura. The congregation there reacted with warm enthusiasm, proving once again that good music knows no denomination. Now, the Prime Chime Ringers have a ball with bells as they offer Cynthia Dobrinsky's exuberant a festive entrada. Like Thomas Carlyle said, music is well said to be the speech of angels. He must have been speaking of the Prime Chime Ringers. They do play beyond their years, don't they? Now, if this were New York's famous Radio City Music Hall, you'd all sit here amazed as people and bells and tables and the stage and all those kinds of things were moved and rearranged automatically. However, well, we do it the old-fashioned way. Take just a moment to greet your neighbor, or if you're the shy type, just sit there and quietly wriggle your toes. Now, while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you about the Joy Ringers. The Joy Ringers is our newest handbell choir. A little over 6 months ago, they were but a tinkle in Donna's ear. That's what it says right here. And I didn't write it. Now, the choir has played twice at church services, but today it has its ringing out party at its very first concert. The Joy Ringers is our beginning adult bell choir, and almost anyone sitting here today has the prerequisites to join this group. If you know the 3 primary colors, can count to 4, and know your right hand from your left, we invite you to join us for our autumn season, because we can teach anyone all you'll have to know, really. The choir's first song is the Southern spiritual Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen. And I'm told that some members of the Joy Ringers like to paraphrase it as Nobody Knows the Trouble We're In. In any case, I am assured that the title is not only a snide reference to their rehearsals. Ladies and gentlemen, the Joy Ringers. Well, now that didn't sound like it's been trouble they've seen. It sounded more like they've seen the light. For contrast, the Joy Ringers now offer the lovely shaker melody, Simple Gifts. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free. 6 months old. Can you imagine how good they're going to sound by Christmas? I'll use this moment to tell you a little bit more about the English handbell. Each bell being played here today represents a specific note, precision tuned. The music looks like a piano score, and the bells are similar to a keyboard. White handles are natural notes. Black handles are the flats or sharps. The higher notes are played by the small bells to your left. The lower notes are the larger bells to your right. The largest bell the church owns is a low G, a very low G. It weighs in at 22 pounds. You'll see and hear this big Bertha of bells later in the program. By the way, the cost of this largest bell is approximately $1,500, including the case. And the price of each bell goes down as they get smaller. Makes sense. With the smallest one costing about $100. Because our choirs play music specially arranged for handbells, it's difficult to realize that each bell is like a single key on a piano. It must be rung at a perfectly precise moment. Sometimes the peal must end quickly so that it doesn't obscure the next note. Other times it must be rung so that the tone floats to a glorious end. Sounds easy until you realize that each ringer holds as many as 4 bells at the same time and is responsible for changing as many as 8 bells without missing a note. Well, now you're all English handbell experts. Just in time, too, because we're ready to get back to the music. What better way than with the praise ringers, our more experienced junior and senior high school handbell choir. For their first selection, they've chosen John F. Wilson's Resounding Joy. The Praise Ringers.